So, picture this. It was just another Tuesday morning. You know the drill. My alarm blared at 6 a.m. sharp, a sound that, no matter how many years I've been doing this dad thing, still manages to feel like a jump scare. I usually hit snooze once, maybe twice, before I finally dragged myself out of bed. First order of business? Coffee. Strong, black, and absolutely essential for human survival before 8 a.m. While the brew was doing its magic, I'd navigate the minefield that is my kids' bedrooms, gently coaxing them awake. Time to rise and shine, sleepyheads, I'd announce, usually to a chorus of groans and the occasional pillow flying in my general direction. The joys of parenthood. This particular morning felt especially normal. The sun was just peeking over the rooftops, casting those long, gentle shadows across our perfectly manicured lawns. Our neighborhood, Willow Creek Estates, is pretty typical suburban America. Lots of two-story houses, basketball hoops and driveways, and the faint, comforting smell of freshly cut grass in the summer, or in this case, a crisp autumn chill in the air. We moved here about 5 years ago, drawn by the good schools and the quiet streets. For the most part, it's been great. Sure, we have an HOA, and like all HOAs, they have their quirks, but nothing too wild. Mostly just reminders about trash cans or overgrown hedges. Nothing that ever really bothered my daily rhythm. Breakfast was a blur of spilled cereal and half-eaten toast, followed by the usual frantic scramble for backpacks, lunchboxes, and missing shoes. "Dad, where's my math book? I can't find my jacket." Standard preschool chaos. Eventually, we'd make it out the door, the three of us, my 2 kids, Liam and Chloe, bundled up against the morning chill. Our house is just a short walk to the main entrance of the subdivision, which is where the school bus stop is. It's a pretty central spot, right off Magnolia Lane, the main artery into our little enclave. The bus stop itself is usually a friendly little gathering. A few other parents are always there, sipping coffee from travel mugs, making small talk about the weather, weekend plans, or the latest school fundraiser. Mrs. Henderson, a sweet lady from down the street, would always be there with her grandson, little Timmy, who's in Liam's class. Mr. Peterson, who works from home, often walked his golden retriever, Buddy, past us, giving a friendly wave. It was a pleasant, predictable start to the day. The kids would jostle around, comparing Pokemon cards or complaining about homework, while the parents exchanged knowing glances and the occasional sigh of relief at the prospect of a few hours of peace and quiet. As we approached the stop that morning, the usual cast of characters was already there. Liam immediately darted off to join his friends, animatedly discussing some video game strategy. Chloe, ever the more reserved one, stayed close to my side, occasionally peeking out from behind my leg. I nodded a greeting to Mrs. Henderson. "Morning, Carol," I said, offering a small smile. "Looks like it's going to be a beautiful day." "It sure does, Mark," she replied, her voice soft and warm. "Perfect for a walk after I dropped Timmy off." I took a sip of my coffee, the warmth spreading through me. The air was cool and crisp, a hint of autumn already in the air despite it still being late August. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves in the oak trees lining Magnolia Lane. From where we stood, we had a clear view of the entrance, the big stone sign declaring Willow Creek Estates, and the electronic gate that was usually open during the day, only closing at night. Everything was perfectly normal. The road was clear, the sky was blue, and in about 5 minutes, that big yellow bus would come rumbling down the street, pick up our kids, and whisk them off to school. Just another ordinary, peaceful Tuesday morning. Another Tuesday morning, another school run. You know how it is. Sun barely up, the smell of stale coffee in my thermos, and the usual rumble of the engine as I pulled out of the depot. My route for the last 5 years has been pretty smooth. Mostly the Whisper Creek Estates development. A big, planned community, lots of families, lots of kids. I like it. The kids are usually pretty good, and the parents are generally chill. Today felt like it would be no different. I had already picked up the first few stops, a couple of 5th graders arguing over a Roblox update in the back, and a quiet 2nd grader drawing unicorns in her notebook up front. Just a typical Tuesday. I was rolling up to the main entrance of Whisper Creek, the one with the big stone pillars and the manicured flower beds. It's got that welcome to paradise vibe, you know? Anyway, as I rounded the last bend leading to the gate, I noticed something off. Not a car broken down, not a construction barrier. No, this was something else entirely. Standing dead center in the middle of the road, right where I needed to turn in, was a woman. My first thought was, is she waiting for someone? Did she just stop in the middle of the street? But no, she wasn't looking around. She was just standing there, hands on her hips, like she owned the entire asphalt. She was probably in her late 40s or early 50s, impeccably dressed in what looked like tennis gear, even though it was maybe 7 a.m. Her blonde bob was perfect, and she had those oversized sunglasses perched on her nose, completely obscuring her eyes. The kind of look that just screams, "I demand to speak to your manager," even when she's just buying groceries. Yeah, that look. I slowed the bus right down, figuring she'd move. I mean, it's a school bus, right? Big yellow behemoth, hard to miss, clearly marked. She had to see it. But she didn't budge, not an inch. I even gave a little honk, just a courtesy tap, not an angry blare. Nothing. She just stood there, statuesque, like she was posing for a very strange, very annoying sculpture garden. A wave of confusion washed over me, quickly followed by that familiar prickle of annoyance. What on earth was this woman doing? Did she not realize she was holding up a school bus full of children? I glanced in the rearview mirror. The kids were starting to notice too. Little Timmy, my second grader, had stopped drawing unicorns and was peering over his seat. "Mr. David, why are we stopped?" he piped up, his voice a little sing-songy. "Yeah, I'm gonna be late for history," a fifth grader complained from the back. I sighed, trying to keep my voice even. "Just a little delay, guys. Looks like we have a pedestrian situation." Pedestrian situation, right. More like entitled human obstacle. I pulled the parking brake, turned off the engine, and opened the door. Maybe she hadn't heard the horn. Maybe she was having a bad morning. Or maybe, just maybe, she was completely out of her mind. "Excuse me, ma'am," I called out, trying to keep my tone polite, professional. "You're blocking the road. I need to get into the neighborhood." She didn't even flinch, didn't turn her head, just slowly, deliberately lifted one hand and waved it dismissively at me, like I was an annoying fly. Then, still facing straight ahead, she barked, "This road is closed." My jaw almost hit the floor. Closed? What was she talking about? There were no signs, no police, just her, blocking a public thoroughfare, a school bus route, with nothing but her own audacity. The annoyance started to boil into genuine frustration. I was looking at a full-blown Karen, wasn't I? Right here, right now, in the middle of my Tuesday morning. I just remember the absolute silence that fell over the bus when I finally cut the engine. Not the good, peaceful kind of silence, the kind you get on a Sunday morning, but the kind that screams, something is wrong. It was an abrupt, jarring halt that probably had every kid in their seat jolting forward. Through the windshield, framed perfectly by the wiper blades, there she was, standing smack dab in the middle of the only access road into the neighborhood. Arms crossed, chin tilted up like she was accepting some grand imaginary award. Her perfectly coiffed platinum blonde hair practically gleamed in the harsh morning sun, reflecting off the dark tint of her oversized designer sunglasses. I'd seen her around before, of course, the one everyone privately called HOA Karen, a name whispered with a mixture of fear and derision at block parties. But I never, in my wildest dreams, thought our paths would collide like this. My first instinct, honestly, was just pure, unadulterated disbelief. I mean, who in their right mind blocks a school bus? A school bus full of 30-plus kids, most of whom were already antsy for summer vacation or just plain antsy to get home and escape the lingering boredom of a Friday afternoon. They were kids, for crying out loud. Their schedules were tight. Their parents were waiting. I took a deep, shaky breath, trying to summon every last ounce of patience I had left in my reserves. It had already been a long, sweltering day of navigating afternoon traffic, and frankly, I just wanted to get these kids dropped off and head home myself. My neck was stiff, my back ached, and now this. I engaged the air brakes, the sharp psh cutting through the morning's false quiet. Then I opened the bus door, the familiar hydraulic hiss, a stark, almost absurd contrast to the almost eerie silence hanging over everything else. The air was thick with the scent of freshly cut grass, mixed with the faint chlorine smell from someone's backyard pool. A combination that usually calmed me, made me think of lazy weekends. But today, it just felt mocking, like the world was carrying on its pleasant routine while I was stuck in some absurd waking nightmare. "Ma'am?" I called out, my voice trying to be as neutral and polite as humanly possible, bordering on saccharine. "Excuse me, ma'am, I need you to move your vehicle. This is the school bus route." I gestured vaguely towards the massive yellow vehicle behind me, as if its sheer size wasn't already self-explanatory. She didn't budge, not an inch, not a muscle twitched in her rigid stance. She just lowered her sunglasses a fraction, maybe half an inch, peering at me over the top of them, her eyes invisible behind the dark lenses. But the contempt in her posture was palpable. It was a look of utter, dismissive disdain plastered across her perfectly made-up face. It was the kind of look that immediately tells you this isn't going to be a quick, amicable conversation. Oh no, this was going to be an event, a saga. "And who are you?" she demanded, her voice cutting through the morning air, sharp and brittle like breaking glass. "Are you even authorized to be driving on private property? Because this is private property, you know." She emphasized private as if it were a secret, sacred word only she knew the true meaning of. My jaw practically hit the pavement. Private property? This road, designated and used by the school district for the past 30 years, was suddenly private property? My brain struggled to process the sheer audacity. "Ma'am," I began, trying to keep the incredulity from my voice. "I'm the school bus driver. This is a public road access to the neighborhood for residents and essential services like ours. It's been this way for decades." I tried to keep my tone even, but I could feel the frustration starting to bubble up in my chest, a hot, unpleasant pressure. The kids on the bus were already starting to buzz, their whispers growing louder, a restless energy building. A couple of them, the braver ones, were pressing their faces against the windows, pointing at her, their little faces a mix of confusion and burgeoning excitement at the unexpected drama. "Public road," she scoffed, pushing her sunglasses back up with a dramatic flick of her wrist, clearly enjoying the attention. "Hardly. This is a private access road owned and maintained by the Homeowners Association. And I am on the HOA board, incidentally, a very active member. And I say you are trespassing." She even puffed out her chest a little, adjusting her expensive-looking floral blouse, as if the sheer weight of her self-appointed authority could magically move a 20-ton yellow bus, its engine still ticking faintly behind me. I just stared at her. Trespassing? Was she genuinely serious? My brain was still struggling to compute the dizzying level of entitlement and delusion I was witnessing. My internal monologue was already devolving into a string of colorful expletives I couldn't possibly utter aloud. "Ma'am, with all due respect," I forced out, practically gritting my teeth. "I have a bus full of children here who need to get home. They've been on this bus all day and they are tired. You cannot block a school bus. It's illegal." I tried to inject a bit more firmness, a bit more legal weight into my voice. Maybe she just didn't understand the actual gravity of the situation she was creating. "They can wait," she declared, crossing her arms again, a smug, self-satisfied smirk now playing on her lips. It was almost like she was enjoying their discomfort. "Perhaps they should learn a lesson about respecting private property. And frankly, your buses drive far too fast through here. It's a hazard. I've personally clocked you at least twice going over the 15 mph limit." Over the 15 mph limit? My speedometer was calibrated twice a year, meticulously maintained, and I was notoriously careful, especially when kids were on board. Every nerve in my body was screaming. "Ma'am, that's simply not true," I retorted, my voice tighter than I intended. "We adhere to all traffic laws, always. And whether you believe it's private property or not, you cannot obstruct traffic, especially not a school bus carrying minors. That's a serious offense." My patience, already threadbare, was rapidly eroding, replaced by a low, insistent thrum of anger. I could feel my temples starting to pound, a dull ache growing behind my eyes. From inside the bus, I heard a rising chorus of groans and mutters. Then a parent, Mrs. Henderson, a sweet lady who always brought me homemade cookies around Christmas, stuck her head out the emergency window near the back, her usually calm face etched with concern. "What's happening, Mr. Johnson? Why are we stopped? My son has a doctor's appointment soon." "Just a misunderstanding, Mrs. Henderson," I called back, trying desperately to project a calm I definitely didn't feel. My voice, even to my own ears, sounded strange. This lady is claiming the road is private, and she's refusing to move. Karen, hearing this, actually turned her head slightly towards the bus and raised her voice, making sure everyone could hear her. "It is private, and until this bus company agrees to install speed governors on your vehicles or changes its ridiculously unsafe route, I will continue to ensure the safety and well-being of my neighborhood." She accentuated "my" as if she personally owned every blade of grass, every tree, every manicured shrub, every inch of asphalt, and every single resident within a 5-mile radius. That was it. That was the line. My polite demeanor, already hanging by a thread, completely evaporated. My blood pressure shot up a good 30 points, maybe more. My hands clenched into tight fists at my sides, my knuckles white. "Ma'am," I said, my voice now low, controlled, but undeniably laced with an edge of pure, unadulterated steel. "You don't get to make up traffic laws or reroute essential services. This isn't a suggestion, it's a direct order from me to move out of the way." "If you don't, I will be calling the police, right now." I pulled out my phone, making sure she saw it, my thumb hovering over the dial pad. She merely laughed. A short, dismissive, entirely unimpressed little bark of a laugh that grated on my nerves like fingernails on a chalkboard. "Go right ahead," she said, her smugness reaching an entirely new level, a triumph gleaming in her invisible eyes behind the shades. "I know the chief of police. We golf together. He'll agree with me. I've already lodged several formal complaints about your reckless driving, actually. You're the one who's going to be in trouble, not me." She even started to pull out her phone, holding it up as if to mimic me, but with an air of superior, almost chilling confidence. Her expression told me she genuinely believed she held all the cards. My mind raced. This wasn't just some annoying, trivial misunderstanding. This woman was fully committed to this ridiculous, dangerous standoff, genuinely believing she was the righteous defender of her domain. The sun beat down relentlessly, making the bus a hot box, and I could already feel sweat trickling down my back, plastering my shirt to my skin. The murmuring on the bus grew louder, more agitated. I could hear one of the younger kids, maybe a kindergartner, starting to whimper, their small voice rising above the din. This wasn't just about my schedule or my frustration anymore. This was about these innocent kids, stuck here, being held hostage by a delusional woman on a power trip. My anger started to shift from a low, simmering resentment to a rapid, undeniable boil. I clenched my fists again, taking another deep, shaky breath, trying to regain some semblance of composure, trying to figure out my next move, because one thing was crystal clear. This wasn't a negotiation, it was a confrontation, and Karen had just drawn the battle lines, daring me to cross them. The bus is stopped. Karen's car, a pristine white SUV, is diagonally parked right in front of the entrance gate, completely blocking the road. The bus driver, bless his heart, is already outside, hands up in a gesture of exasperation, trying to talk some sense into her. But Karen, she's not having it. She's got her window rolled down just a crack, yelling something about private property and unauthorized vehicles, even though it's, a school bus that comes here every single day. I'm standing there, phone in hand, already recording because I just knew this was going to be gold for the internet. The kids on the bus, man, they're starting to get restless. Little faces pressed against the windows, confused and a little scared. Some parents are walking up from inside the neighborhood, wondering why their kids are late. The whole thing is just a pressure cooker building up. "Ma'am, I have a schedule to keep," the bus driver, a guy who looked like he'd seen it all, said, his voice surprisingly calm. "These children need to get home." Karen just poked her head out a little further, her eyes narrowed like she was personally offended by the existence of public transportation. "This is a private, gated community. You cannot just bring any old vehicle in here. It depreciates our property value. What if someone jumps out and contaminates our lawns?" She gestured wildly at the impeccably manicured grass next to the road. "Contaminates their lawns?" I swear, I almost choked on my own spit. The sheer audacity. I stepped a little closer, wanting to get a better angle, but also feeling that familiar surge of anger. "Ma'am, that's the school bus. It's authorized. It's literally picking up and dropping off the children who live in this private, gated community." I put air quotes around it just to spite her. She whips her head around, fixing me with a glare that could curdle milk. "And who are you?" Another busybody interfering with the rules. "I am on the HOA board. I set the rules. You people have no respect for order." "You're blocking a school bus, Karen," I shot back, calling her by the name everyone in the neighborhood used behind her back. "With kids on it. That's not order, that's obstruction." A few more parents had gathered now, clearly agitated. One mom, a petite woman with her arms crossed, finally piped up. "Seriously, Meredith, move your car. My daughter needs to pee." Meredith? That was her name. She turned her venomous gaze to the mom. "Do not address me by my first name, and your daughter's bladder control is not my problem. My problem is maintaining the integrity of our community." At this point, I had had enough. I stepped back, dialed 911, and started explaining the situation. "Yeah, I've got a woman here, blocking the entrance to the Creekwood Estates with her vehicle. She's refusing to move, claiming HOA authority, preventing a school bus full of children from getting through. It's getting pretty heated." I could hear the dispatch confirming they'd send someone. Good. The tension was palpable. The bus driver had given up trying to reason and was back on his radio. Meredith, meanwhile, seemed to be relishing the attention, pacing around her car, spouting off more nonsense about liability and strangers. She was totally oblivious to the fact that half the crowd now had their phones out recording her. About 10 minutes later, felt like an eternity, a patrol car pulled up. Thank God. Officer Miller, a friendly face I had seen around, stepped out looking calm but serious. He took one look at the scene, the bus, the blocked road, the growing crowd, Meredith in full rant mode, and I could practically see him sigh internally. "Ma'am, I need you to move your vehicle," Officer Miller said, his voice even and authoritative. Meredith, however, was not about to back down. She puffed out her chest. "Officer, I am the vice president of the HOA. This bus is not authorized. They are violating our covenants." Officer Miller pulled out his notepad. "Ma'am, with all due respect, a school bus is considered an essential service. You cannot block a public roadway, especially one that leads to a residential area. That's obstruction." "It's private property," she shrieked, her voice cracking, "and I have the right to protect my home." "You're protecting your home by keeping children on a bus?" I muttered, loud enough for a few people to chuckle. Meredith glared at me again, her face getting redder by the second. "Ma'am, I'm going to ask you one more time. Please move your vehicle, or I will have to issue you a citation." Officer Miller's tone was firm now, no more room for discussion. This was it, the moment of truth. She stood there, frozen for a second, then let out a laugh that was pure, unadulterated entitlement. "A citation for protecting my community? You clearly don't understand who I am." "I understand you're obstructing traffic, ma'am," he replied, already pulling out his ticket book. And that's when she completely lost it. She started screaming, truly screaming. "You can't do this. This is an outrage. I demand to speak to your supervisor. I pay your salary. I own this neighborhood." She actually tried to grab the ticket book from his hand, a move so unbelievably stupid I honestly thought she was going for a TikTok challenge. Officer Miller, bless his patience, quickly but firmly took her arm. "Ma'am, I'm placing you under arrest for obstruction and resisting an officer. Please put your hands behind your back." Her eyes went wide with shock, then filled with a rage I had only seen in horror movies. "Arrest? For what? I've done nothing wrong. Let go of me, you thug. I will sue you. I will sue this entire department. You will regret this." But it was too late. He had her wrists secured, and another officer, who must have been called for backup, was already approaching. She started struggling, twisting, yelling obscenities that would make a sailor blush. The crowd went silent, a collective gasp. Kids on the bus were now openly staring, some with their mouths agape, some clearly trying to hold back giggles. The second officer helped secure her, and she was still fighting, a flailing mess of blonde hair and expensive activewear. They gently but firmly guided her towards the patrol car, her screeching echoing through the quiet neighborhood. "This is an assault! I'm being kidnapped! Call my lawyer! Call the mayor! I'm a respected member of this community!" As they put her in the back of the patrol car, still yelling about her rights and how she was being persecuted, a wave of relief washed over me. It was over. The school bus was finally able to proceed, the kids waving and cheering as it passed Meredith's now empty spot. She was still banging on the window of the police car, a truly magnificent public meltdown, but she was finally, blessedly, out of our hair. Man, what a sight! What a sight! So the officer, bless his heart, didn't even flinch. He just finished reading her rights, which, let me tell you, Karen looked like she'd never heard those words put together in that order before. And then click, the cuffs were on. She was still sputtering, of course. "This is outrageous! You can't do this! I am a homeowner! I pay taxes! This is my neighborhood!" she shrieked, her voice cracking with indignation. But it was too late. The second set of officers, who'd clearly seen this rodeo before, were already gently but firmly guiding her towards the patrol car. The sight of her being led away, still trying to argue with the very air around her, was just chef's kiss. I swear, a collective sigh of relief went through the entire street. It wasn't just me. You could feel the tension drain away from the bus driver, from the kids peering out the windows, and especially from the handful of parents who'd rushed out when they heard the commotion. The first officer, a calm, steady guy, gave the bus driver a nod. "All right, sir, you're clear to proceed. We'll handle this from here." And just like that, the air brakes hissed, the big yellow bus rumbled to life, and it slowly, majestically pulled forward, finally entering the neighborhood it was meant to serve. The kids on board, well, they were a mix of confused and wide-eyed, probably with an incredible story to tell at school. Some even waved, and I waved back, a genuine smile finally breaking through my exasperated grimace. Karen, from the back of the police cruiser, pressed her face against the window, her mouth still moving, but the sound was muffled now. It was glorious, absolutely, utterly glorious. I saw Mrs. Henderson from down the street, who'd been fuming in her driveway, actually do a little fist pump. And Mr. Davies, usually a quiet man, chuckled out loud. The sheer audacity of Karen to think she had the right to unilaterally block a school bus, it was just beyond belief. The lead officer walked over to me, jotting something down in a small notebook. "Thanks for your patience, sir. Appreciate you not escalating further. We had a few calls about her already this morning, but this, blocking an emergency service route, technically, and obstructing traffic, that's a whole different ballgame." He shook his head. Some people just don't get it. I just nodded, still trying to process the surreal event. No kidding, I was just trying to get the kids to school. Never seen anything like it. He gave me a sympathetic look. "Well, she'll be spending some time downtown tonight. Charges will include obstruction of a public roadway, disorderly conduct, and possibly resisting arrest, depending on how she behaved back there." He gestured vaguely towards the patrol car, where Karen was now angrily crossing her arms, still glaring daggers at anything that moved. We've had issues with her before regarding homeowners association rules, parking disputes, you name it, but this is definitely her biggest stunt yet. I felt this deep sense of satisfaction wash over me. It wasn't just about the bus finally getting through or the kids getting to school. It was about seeing someone who genuinely believed the rules didn't apply to them. Someone who thought their personal inconvenience trumped the safety and schedules of dozens of children finally facing consequences. It wasn't about malice. It was about the simple, undeniable fact that sometimes Karens do get what's coming to them. As the second police car, with Karen still muttering furiously in the back, pulled away, heading towards the main road, the neighborhood began to breathe again. Parents were heading back inside, the last few stragglers waving thanks to the police. The bus had already vanished around the corner, leaving only the lingering smell of diesel and the echoes of Karen's indignant shrieks. I just stood there for a moment, letting the quiet settle in. It felt clean, like a stubborn stain had finally been scrubbed away. The absurdity of the situation still lingered, but it was now tinged with the sweet taste of vindication. You know, you hear these stories, you see the videos, and you always wonder if anyone ever actually does anything about these kinds of people. And today, they did. Today, justice was served, swiftly and decisively, right here in front of my eyes. And honestly, it was glorious. Absolutely glorious. The bus was on its way, the kids were safe, and Karen was off to explain her unique interpretation of traffic laws to a judge. Couldn't have asked for a better ending to a truly wild morning. The squad car finally pulling away, siren off, just the rumble of the engine fading into the quiet street. That was the first real breath I had taken in what felt like an eternity. The bus driver, bless his patient soul, just shook his head, a wry smile playing on his lips, and then, slowly, he put the bus in gear. Seeing that big yellow beast finally roll past where she had been standing just moments before, it was like watching a dam break. The kids on board, they started cheering, pressing their faces against the windows, waving at us. Some of them probably didn't even fully grasp the drama they had just witnessed, but they knew something big had happened, and they were finally going home. Me, I just stood there, leaning against my mailbox, watching the bus disappear around the bend. My shoulders were still tense, my jaw tight. It was over, for now. But the sheer mind-numbing absurdity of it all just washed over me. Blocking a school bus? A school bus? What kind of person, what kind of twisted logic makes you think that is a reasonable course of action? It is not just petty, it is genuinely dangerous. Those kids could have been late, missed something important, or worse, if that bus had just decided to try and power through her little blockade. The neighborhood, let me tell you, was buzzing. Not in a gossipy way, not initially. More like a collective gasp of disbelief, followed by a sigh of relief. People were out on their porches, whispering, looking down the street where she had been taken away. You could feel the tension draining from the air. Everyone knew HOA Karen. Everyone had their stories. But this was a whole new level of unhinged. The fallout for her was, well, swift and satisfyingly public, if I am honest. Turns out, obstructing traffic, especially a school bus, especially with a police officer present and having been warned repeatedly, isn't just a slap on the wrist. She got booked. Booked. The whole shebang. Mugshot, fingerprints, the works. I heard from a friend on the inside, yeah, small town, everyone knows someone, that she was absolutely incandescent with rage the entire time, demanding to speak to the chief, threatening lawsuits, citing HOA bylaws that absolutely do not apply to municipal roadways. It was a classic performance, apparently. They said she was yelling about her rights being violated and how she was just enforcing the rules. The irony, the absolute gut-wrenching irony of her demanding her rights while actively infringing on everyone else's, especially those kids. It almost made me laugh. A tired, bitter laugh, but a laugh nonetheless. And the HOA? Oh, the HOA. They tried to distance themselves faster than a cat from a cucumber. Emergency meeting, formal statement about her actions not representing the board, yada yada. But the damage was done. Her reign of terror, her grip on the association, it crumbled. Neighbors who had been too intimidated to speak up before, they found their voices. There was a petition, a recall vote. She was out. Gone. Not just from the board, but she actually ended up selling her house a few months later. Couldn't stand the stairs, I guess. Or maybe the legal fees from trying to fight the obstruction charges, which, surprisingly, weren't dropped. She had to go to court, and she lost, paid a hefty fine, had a pretty little mark on her record. The whole thing, when I think about it now, months later, still feels surreal. It is like a cautionary tale written in real time. You cannot just make up your own rules and expect the world to bend to your entitled will, especially when those rules endanger kids or block essential services. It taught me, and I think a lot of people in this neighborhood, that sometimes you just have to stand your ground, calmly but firmly, against that kind of absurdity. You can't let one person's warped sense of authority dictate the common good. And now, the bus comes and goes, unimpeded. The new HOA board is actually pretty chill, focusing on real issues, not policing lawn gnomes. Life is a lot quieter. Sometimes, when I see a school bus drive by, I still get a little flicker of that tension in my chest, that memory of her standing there, arms crossed, face purple with self-righteous fury. And then I remember the squad car, the fading siren, and the collective sigh of relief that swept through our little community. It is a strange thing, isn't it? How one person's delusion can cause so much chaos, and how their eventual downfall can bring so much peace. A peculiar kind of victory, definitely, but a victory nonetheless.